The Empire, a New York Mortgage Bankers Association production.
Welcome to the inaugural episode of the Empire Podcast, a new podcast produced by the New York Mortgage Bankers Association. I'm Adam Friedman, managing partner of Friedman Vartolo, and I'm joined today by my co-host, Marcel Bryar, principal at Mortgage Policy Advisors. Every quarter, we'll bring together policymakers, industry leaders, legal experts, and practitioners to discuss the issues shaping mortgage banking in New York. For our first episode, we're discussing deed theft. It's an issue receiving increasing attention across New York. Law enforcement is focused on it, legislators are focused on it, homeowners are concerned about it, and mortgage lenders and servicers are increasingly counting it as an issue as well. To better understand the issue, Marcel recently sat down with Queens DA Melinda Katz. Before we get into that conversation, what made DA Katz the appropriate person to kick off this conversation?
She's been a leader in the fight against deed theft. And when she got into office, she established a bureau focused on deed theft as well as other housing-related issues.
Melinda, thank you for making time.
It's my pleasure.
What is deed theft? Like, how does it happen?
Well, deed theft at its core is taking possessive interest in someone else's property. I mean, that is what it is. And then utilizing that possession to your benefit, to your financial benefit, whether it be a mortgage or transferring the property to a third party, however one would use a deed. But being a victim of deed theft means that someone is using your interest in order to make a living and in order to steal from you.
How do these people who do the deed theft, how do they manage to forge somebody's signature and actually get it recorded in the land records? It's
not just about the signature. It's about all of the documents that are included in selling a property and taking a mortgage out on a property and taking a home equity loan, a HELOC, out on the property. And different types of loans need different types of information. You can steal and get a forged notary sign stamp. You can do all of these things to lead to someone taking a possessory interest in your home or deed or property. And AI has made it so easy for people to forge things at this point that I think it's an important thing to note that your banks and the people who are issuing loans and the people who are dealing with real estate need to vet properties well, need to vet the owners, need to vet the buyers, need to vet the people who might be taking a second mortgage, and you need to do a real analysis of those properties.
Right.
The people that would like to steal your deed are those that go after the vulnerable, the seniors that maybe their spouses have passed away, families who are having internal struggles, those that don't have someone who is left as an executor in the will. So there's no way to figure out where that property is going. If you have fights with your siblings, is there a way for one of the siblings to feign ownership and the right to transfer the property's deed? Those are all the things that have to actually happen in order to catch someone who's trying to steal your possessory interest in your deed.
Once someone has stolen your deed, they've recorded it in the land records. You discover this maybe weeks or months later when something happens, or maybe renters show up and they think they're moving into a new property. And how long does it take to fix that?
Well, it takes quite a while, first of all, but the notification shouldn't take you that long. So, for instance, in the city of New York, we have what's called ACRIS and nyc.gov, where you can put your property into ACRIS, and it will notify you if anybody's trying to, for want of a better word and not a legal word, mess with your deed, right? So if someone tries to take a mortgage out, if someone is trying to do a title search on your property, you should be notified. And in those particular instances, you also should have, just so you know, I mean, as a side note, a title insurance company needs to be a respected and vetted company as well, because they would be the ones who would be responsible for searching the title and your deed to go back. But yes, you should be notified pretty quickly if you follow the system that is put in place in order for the notification to happen. If someone inherits a property, they should make sure that they watch it. They change the locks. They make sure that other people can't enter that property. A lot of mortgages come with a search of the property, in order to inspect the property. Things of that nature. No one should be able to have access to your property. And that property should also be watched and cared for. It also takes a while to prosecute.
Yeah.
Because when we do a forensic analysis of all the documents and all the witnesses and all of the victims, it takes a while to get through that process. But in the meantime, we also have saved time here in the state of New York, and the legislature and the governor deserve a lot of credit for doing this, which is a few years ago they passed a law, 42045 for anybody who's interested, which is that if there is a third-party transfer of a deed, we have saved hundreds of thousands of dollars and years of legislation, because now the law accounts for a prosecution and a conviction on that deed, showing that that deed is fraudulent, and it will go back to the rightful owners on its own.
When that happens, does the deed get pulled out of the land records and erased?
The deed will be pulled out and the deed will be returned to the rightful owner of the property. We make a motion to do that, and we are now, according to the new legislation, allowed to do that, and we have done it several times, and we've been quite successful. You
created a bureau that's focused on this issue. Why did you feel the need to create a bureau dedicated to working on this and other housing-related issues?
With the advancements of technology and the advancement of AI and the advancement of so many ways in order to commit fraud on the government, I felt that it was necessary for our office to be responsive to that. I also had a deep interest in the constituency of the people of Queens County. Although I was a lawyer with Weil, Gotshal, Manges, and Greenberg Traurig, I was a partner or a shareholder. I was also a person who lived here in Queens County my entire life. And I was a homeowner since 1990, I guess it was, a homeowner. So that is a substantial amount of time for those that choose to do the math. It was important for me. People felt comfortable with their ownership of their property, and that they knew that if something happened to the ownership of their property, that I had their back. I was the borough president before I was the district attorney. It's now my 7th year as being the district attorney. And I have gained quite the relationships with my constituency. And I wanted to make sure that they felt safe, and they felt that they were protected from someone stealing their deed with the advancement of technology and AI. I also wanted to make sure that they were safe when it came to squatters, right? People who come into your home and say they have a right to be there because they were there over 30 days. And they trespassed in order to enter the property. And so they kind of went hand in hand.
What types of properties are the primary targets of deed theft? Is it vacant properties? Is it when someone passes away? What are the circumstances you typically see this come up in?
It's usually the vulnerability of the people who own the property. And that vulnerability can come in a lot of ways. That vulnerability could come because someone is on their own and doesn't have the expertise to have someone around them to advise them. That could come because they are vulnerable to other people's opinions, caregivers, people who are in their homes, children sometimes. But not as often. It could come from the fact that someone has died and there are 5 siblings who are inheriting the property with no will, right? So there's no executor. If it goes interstate, a lot of times the children are not sure of which direction to go, and they may not have hired a lawyer or an executor or the state to move them forward. And so then you become much more vulnerable to having someone come in and go to a bank and say, I'm the one, right? I'm the person who is able to transfer deed to this property. I'm also the one who can take out some of its equity, either through a mortgage or a HELOC. And, you need to make sure that you're watching your property, file with the agencies that keep track of this. And also make sure that once you find out that someone is doing something like this, to contact the bank. We are not a small town. We are the city of New York, right? So a banker doesn't always, right? So a banker doesn't always know the individual person who's applying for those loans or applying to control the deed. In a smaller town, maybe that's possible, but it's not possible here. New York City is built on real estate transactions, and so that the amounts that go through our system every single day is not always easy to keep track of. And so we try to do our best to hold people accountable if they are not acting like good actors.
How do you educate your community about this risk? Like, what is I've read about outreach you've done and that your team has done. How does that work, and how do you reach people, especially when people English isn't their first language.
So I have someone who goes to a community board meeting every single month, right? So there are 14 community boards in Queens County. A little myopic for your listeners, but you should just understand that the community board and the precinct council meetings are regular meetings.
Yeah.
And mostly everyone in the state has some sort of that.
Yeah.
But in Queens, there's 14 precinct council meetings that worked with all of our precincts, and 14 community board meetings who are representatives of the area that they're in.
Yeah.
We send ADAs.
Yeah.
We send the bureau chief, Bill Jorgensen, to a lot of meetings where they educate people on how to protect themselves from deed theft and squatters and their real estate transactions. And also, in addition, we not only educates them on that particular issue, I find as the district attorney, it also allows us to get a read on what else is going on in the community.
Yeah.
So they may not have a deed theft question, but they may have a domestic violence question or a human trafficking question. Their child has, their church mate has a daughter that they're worried about being trafficked, for instance. We build trust in the community. How important is that for constituents and people in the county and in the city to know that they can go to their district attorney's office and they can ask questions that they need to ask. And someone's in their meetings. We're not making them come to our office. We're going out to their communities and sending ADAs that have the answers to these questions. And so we educate for that. Deed theft is something, though, that needs education because people are very sometimes convinced that there are protections in place, which there are, by the way.
Yeah.
But with modern technology, it's becoming harder and harder. And no one cares about your own property like you.
Yes.
Right? And so it's important that we give them the tools that they have to protect themselves. And we also think it's important for bankers to know how to protect the people that they're representing and their transactions.
Yeah.
So they need to vet the documents and they need to make sure that the people who are in the room at the signature time are the people who say they are, that they are who they say they are, and that they have the rights that they say they have.
Yeah.
Right? I have a right to dispose of my grandmother's property.
Right.
Well, there has to be documents that back that up.
Yeah.
And those documents have to be able to be backed up by the individual lawyers that wrote them.
Right.
Things of that nature.
When you're encountering a deed theft situation, someone comes in and says, look, I think my deed has been stolen. Someone's trying to put tenants in my property, or someone's selling my property, or someone's putting a mortgage on it. What do people do while it's being worked out? Your office is going after this, your bureau is pursuing the case. What do people do in the meantime?
So our first priority is getting people's homes back.
Yeah.
That's our first priority. Sometimes we have a defendant when we do it, and sometimes we don't. Yeah. But our first priority has to be getting the homes back for people. But that means analyzing the case and doing a forensic analysis of the documents that we have to prove that it's their property.
Right.
And, this has come up more so in squatters than deed theft.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times when there's deed theft, people aren't living in the homes, right? They're living somewhere else, and they haven't had a watch on the home.
Right.
But in squatters, for instance, we've had cases in squatters where we get people's homes back. We've had cases where we prosecute not only the defendant who took the home, not only for taking the home illegally, but also for renting the rooms out. And, it's remarkable the type of cases that we have prosecuted. But our main priority has to be getting people's homes back, making sure that the analysis of the documents happens as fast as it can, the interview of the witnesses, the interview of anyone involved in it, the title search company, anyone who's been involved with the transaction.
You have a DA for each borough in New York, right? And I know that some other DAs have seen the same issue and have deployed resources to address it. Is there a DA coordination work that happens?
We all talk to each other. But we don't work together on the same cases normally, right? Every DA has its own his or her own responsibility to her constituents, and we are separate district attorneys. We happen to have very good working relationships with one another, and we do discuss these issues all the time. And yes, the former mayor also had people to get together for deed theft and talk about the issue as well. We're happy to work with anybody on the issue, but at the end of the day, if it's fraudulent, this is someone who has planned, thought about
Yes.
and created documents that are forged in order to get into that room with the attorneys who are selling the property or giving out, or the bank that's giving out the mortgage or whatever it is. They're planning this out as a fraudulent scheme.
Yes.
So it's not a mistake.
Yes.
And I think that's really an important distinction. This is not a mistake. This is someone who planned it out to steal your rights to your property.
Yes.
And that's where we come in.
If you could call Governor Hochul, or if you call the Assembly and ask for one more tool in your toolkit to address this issue, is there a particular, policy or legislation or power that you think would be helpful? Or do you feel like you have, because it feels like you have, that legislatures passed a bunch of supportive legislation so far, but is there more that you think would be helpful?
Governor Hochul and Speaker Hastie and Andrew Stewart-Cousins have been more than responsive to issues that we needed and cared about deeply. So one of the things, obviously, is the third-party transfer legislation that passed, and that really has saved the constituents of the state of New York hundreds of thousands of dollars in civil litigation. I would say the only thing we need to deal with together in the future is AI. And I think they're already on the path to working and making sure that the use of AI when it has catastrophic results, which it does quite often, that we have the laws on that. Right now, we can use forgery laws in order to review those types of cases, but having specific laws on AIs hasn't really been part of the technology yet. I think that they are gearing towards that, and I have faith that they will address it.
That's great. Thank you, Melinda. I really appreciate your time.
Been my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Marcel, you've spent years working on mortgage policy, housing finance issues. Now that you've sat down with DA Katz, what was your biggest takeaway from that conversation?
It's a continuous battle that we have to keep our eyes on.
When you think about deed theft, you're thinking about it through the lens of protecting homeowners, right? And our audience is most likely made more largely up of lenders, servicers, industry professionals. How should they view this issue? As a homeowner issue or as something larger?
To me, this is an issue that affects the system that makes homeownership possible. If we tackle this issue effectively, it's good for homeowners, it's good for the servicing and lending industry. Everybody benefits from effectively tackling this issue.
Jonathan, Jodi, thank you for joining the podcast. Just a brief introduction for each of you. Jonathan is a lawyer, runs his own firm, Robbin Law, complex business litigation, as well as a focus on consumer finance law. Jodi, you are executive officer of Claims Recovery Financial Services. You are, in many ways, the tip of the spear for the industry. So welcome to you both. Jodi, what is the impact of deed theft from your perspective?
Sure. Great question, Marcel, and thanks for having me. With mortgage servicing, deed theft just creates uncertainty. What is their position? What is their role? How do they address this? And who addresses this? And then, of course, along with that, it's just extraordinary risk. If there is deed theft, does that wipe out their loan? And how does this impact the homeowner? Is somebody new in there? Are there new occupants that are illegally trespassing? So, the biggest thing is just creates a lot of uncertainty for the servicer, and that is never a position that a servicer wants to be in.
One thing that struck me from the DA's comments is that everyone agrees this is a big problem. Jonathan, what role should lenders, mortgage servicers, plaintiffs' attorneys, what should their role be in uncovering this crime?
It's a tough question because the banks and servicers have limited ability to really be the judge and jury of all of this. And so, yes, they have to make sure their documents are correct and make sure that their compliance and due diligence is accurate. But at that point, it's not for the servicer or the bank to make that determination.
They have something at stake here, right?
Of course, it's their interests, but they only know what is presented to them. So long as they're following reasonable and strong compliance policies, they can't take that to the next level.
So there are a few bills out there, some pending legislation that at least attempts to solve this problem or put us moving in the right direction. Jonathan, you want to walk us through what's on the table?
So 2 bills that I reviewed from the prior sessions, the legislature is not currently in session, but the 2 that I reviewed in advance were Assembly Bill 9554B and Senate Bill 9731. The Assembly Bill is a bill that creates foreclosure restrictions when title is potentially fraudulent. And the Senate bill is one that establishes a statewide early warning system to prevent deed theft before it causes harm. They're both regarding deed theft, but they do very different things. And these two bills, in my opinion at least, don't mesh well together. I view at least the Assembly bill to be much more geared towards what servicers and banks can and cannot do when there's deed theft. Whereas the Senate bill, which is known as the Homeowner Fraud Protection and Property Alert Act, is designed towards actually finding a way to stop the deed theft. In my opinion, the Senate bill, which develops a statewide alert system, notifications, and it has a bunch of other features towards letting the victim know of this theft, is a much more efficient and effective first step in this process, which I agree with you is a problem, versus the Assembly bill, which if you were to prosecute a foreclosure because of a deed theft, the bank or servicer would be in trouble. When the bank or servicer would really have no way of knowing at that time that there was indeed theft.
Marcel, earlier you mentioned that you think one possible solution or a step in the right direction would be giving the recording offices some additional tools. Do you think the alert system that we're talking about here and is proposed would be one of those types of tools? Do you think it goes far enough?
I think it's a good thing that we have an alert system. I don't think it's enough because often you're getting alerted after the theft has occurred.
Jodi, from a servicer perspective, does that sound good?
I mean, it sounds good if the homeowner is going to be alerted, but it would also be good if there's a mortgage, why not alert the bank or the servicer so they're all aware? And then that way, maybe they would do something different. They wouldn't start a foreclosure, right? Because they knew it was fraudulent. And then they could work with the appropriate parties and the homeowner too to attempt to address the issue.
If a lender, servicer, or mortgage banking executive is watching this episode and remembers one thing from our conversation, what should it be?
I think that this is a real issue and they need to be developing and forward thinking what types of due diligence, compliance, and other tools they can put into their arsenal to fight and protect against this going forward, because it appears that they will be responsible for potential violations going forward.
100% agree with Jonathan. Servicers need to be aware. If they want legislation that's going to be favorable to them, then I say you got to get involved.
We need everybody at the table who understands how the system works. And what we come up with is a system that is not creating a much bigger barrier to home ownership in New York.
What I take away from today's discussion is that deed theft is not simply a homeowner issue, a lender issue, or a law enforcement issue. It's a challenge that affects the entire real estate ecosystem. Protecting homeowners, preventing fraud, preserving confidence in property ownership, and ensuring the integrity of mortgage lending all go hand in hand. We'd like to thank District Attorney Melinda Katz for sharing her insight, as well as Jonathan and Jodi for joining us today. Thanks for watching, and I hope you join us again next time on The Empire.
You've been watching The Empire, a New York Mortgage Bankers Association production. Sponsored by Friedman Vartolo, LLP.